I'm basically repeating myself. We have to strengthen our borders to prevent other illegal immigrants from coming in and worsening the problems that we already have with immigration.
So, do you have a policy to get rid of the problem that we already have?
We can't do much about the immigrants that are currently in our country. This is the third time I've stated it, Mr. Evans.
Yes, Mr. Evans. Moving on to the last theme, which is environment. We'll start with Mr. Moretti. Cutting our emissions by 80% in 40 years is very ambitious. That entails a decrease of pollution by 2% every year. How will our economy support itself when volatile oil market is on?
Well, yes, I must agree. Cutting our emissions is very ambitious in this 80% process. Well, it's not going to be an easy task, but with pulling out of ideas that aren't necessarily needed, such as this Iraq war, we're slowly going to gain surplus and get the money needed to help stabilize our economy and allow this to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. From what I have heard, your stance on the environment is not very concrete. Can you explain to me your environmental plans if you get elected and what you plan to do in specific terms?
Well, what we like to say in our platform is that the Newman campaign supports offshore drilling with a timeline and benchmarks for more alternate energy sources, so we don't have to rely so much on oil. We'll only begin drilling with a dedicated timeline for the research and implementation of alternate energy sources. We already have many nuclear power plants, and we plan on taking these nuclear power plants and possibly turning one of our alternative energy sources into nuclear energy. And yet, instead of keeping our eyes on strictly emissions, by alleviating the process of burning fossil fuels that a lot of our factories and industries do, we will give incentive to those who maintain carbon emissions. And as we discover more alternate energy sources, we'll be able to rely less on these fossil fuels and maybe even totally eliminate the over-the-top burning of carbon emissions. And we also wish to create a board that will trade environmental technology to developing industrial nations such as India and Brazil, which are the top 3 most incoming and heavily developed nations that they also have the highest rate of growth in emissions rate. So as instead of just making America better, we plan on giving incentives to other nations, trading technology, and cutting emissions on the global scale instead of just cutting it down 40% in our nation.